Welcome to UnstuckAF, a podcast here to help you do you better. There's a path that starts where you are, passes through who you are, and leads where you want to go. We're here to hear from people who've walked that path or who are walking it right now. This is Orlando Bishop, Coach Orlando, and I thank you for listening as we learn how to get unstuck, how to be unstuck, how to live unstuck. Unstuck as fuck. Welcome. And this week, our guest is someone who has meant so much to me for years and has meant so much to Align for over a decade now, I think. And I'm so excited to have Monique Thomas here with us. We Align member and coachee and all the things. And once upon a time when we were back in Brooklyn at a place called Poly Prep, she was one of my guardian angels. So it's been a pleasure to reconnect with her in this new way and in this new time. So Monique, say hi to the folks.
Hello to the folks. Hey, Orlando.
How's it going? I know I'm always like, hey Mo. People
yep,
like
that's true.
So no, really excited to have you on as a guest. And I don't know that there are very many people who, one, been involved in one way or another with Align longer than you have, and two, who've used it as powerfully as you have in a number of situations. And we'll get to all that. But I did want to start with the basic question that we always start with. And for you, it's a very specific version, which is how and or when did you know that the Align methodology was going to be a big deal in your life?
Okay. So how and when did I know that I know? Well, I'll say this, that the way that I knew that Align would work is because you were the facilitator of this, that you bring all of who you are to something that is going to benefit people. So I trust and I trusted that I could be assured that what you had for me was aligned for my good, right? And the second part of that, I guess, is when I was willing to just kind of deny all of the things that were placed on me as like what I shoulda, what I coulda, and accept that there was a way forward with being authentic and figuring out what was going to be necessary for success and how to define it. So that's I don't think it gives a certain date, but it definitely is from the beginning of speaking with you that you and your method bring an assuredness that can be trusted, that you could work and get work done.
Appreciate it. So there'll be a little bit of awkwardness because I will be like, oh, tell me something else great about working with Align. But so thank you, and I do appreciate that. I'd love for you to share where you were when we reconnected, because we've even talked about maybe putting together a talk at some point together or something like that. But if you could give folks a sense, and we'll, talk about some other things from your life and so on. But yeah, just a sense of when we connected, where you were.
Okay. So when we reconnected, I would say, let's say this, that before we physically were able to connect by phone, that I remember when I was working, but not really working, when I was studying at Yale, I remembered that's where you went undergrad. And I was like, oh, we missed each other. But look, we're walking in some of the same places. I wonder, you know, if they know Flatbush in the building. You know what I mean? And I had always hoped to find out how you were doing. That a big part of how we connected as young people, whether we were traveling the bus or just as the few African Americans, there were people who were older that looked at and said, hey, how are you doing? And then would say, how are you really doing? And in that same regard, I was always, if I was reaching up, I know to reach down, or if I was reaching across to somebody to bring me forward, that I am using the other hand to come along. So when I had gotten very sick and gone through lots of medical issues, just lots of uncertainty with my health, God blessed me with connecting with you on Facebook. And I didn't want to talk at first because everybody that I had tried to reach out to me before, they wanted to speak to the Monique that they thought I should have been, that where they saw me going with all of the things that were going on. And yet the people who were around for all of the debilitating things didn't get to see like where I was broken into like really pieces of the body not working. So, but yeah, you were good with that. You was like, I just want to talk to you. And that was encouraging.
Yeah. Yeah. It was a powerful experience. I remember at the time, because I did get the sense, you know, we talk about Unstuck, right? I mean, it's the name of the podcast. It's the name of the stage show, basically, you know, variations on this Unstuck. And I definitely got the sense that you felt stuck and that you, I don't know if a word is carrying, but it seemed that you were dealing with the distance between your level of intelligence and education and experience and capability and your life circumstance at the time.
And that's right.
Yeah.
Right? Like that is it really in this kind of very simple way, direct way of saying it. But when I was going through it, it was the heart valve that wasn't working. It was the collapsed lung. It was 27 different medications that I was taking. It was all of the institutions of higher learning that got to take credit for having us folk graduate from them, but then not being available to us when, or I say me, when I was not I was not performing at where they thought I should be. And then the people that I thought were friends were actually just associates, even family members, right? That there were lots of people who just expected me to perform and utilize the skills that came out of that work for them and their purpose, when truly you helped me to see that I had to have courage to be able to say, where did these gifts come from? Who am I here to serve? And what will is it that I want to align myself to? Yeah. And it didn't come out this simply. It wasn't this easy of a conversation, right? Like it was, oh my God, I'm in a shower and I can't tell the difference between when I'm crying or if it's the water on my face. But you were like, you made it to the shower.
Yay!
And what an improvement, right? For someone who I didn't even want to drink anything because I didn't want to have to get out of bed to go to the bathroom. And I admit that today because I know that there are people who are sick that understand the pain that it takes to lift up a body and to engage your core or to want to, and the body's not willing. So then that just like, this is where I'm stuck in the bed. That was the physical part, right?
Yeah.
No, I said that was just the physical part.
Right. Well, I want to ask about that, and then I want to come back to why you said that. So one of the things I've been amazed by, and now that I've been paying more attention and I've, learning from you and learning from some other friends, the number specifically the number of Black women who I know who are dealing with, if not debilitating, seriously limiting medical issues. And it seems there is this theme of inadequate support, even sometimes inadequate, like the actual healthcare itself. And it feels like somehow you weren't being engaged in a way that was allowing you to look toward health. So I guess I'm curious, what was your experience during that time? What was your relationship with your doctors, with the situation that we then ended up working on?
Okay. Whew. Okay. I feel exposed but heard, right? Like I feel hot in my face because parts of me don't want to tap back into some of that because it's hurtful, like traumatically hurtful, right? So I will say that when my husband had really good health insurance when we first started out. So every specialist was willing to see me. They were happy to see me. This was before employees had to pay these high deductibles, right? But they wanted people who had this type of insurance. But as things kept happening, like I was falling, I was losing my balance, I was having issues with my vision. We didn't know what was going on, but it took like certain doctors at Presbyterian Hospital or the bigger ones, like not the local doctors that I would get to first. That they would just be like, oh, well, maybe you need to get some rest or try to change your diet and take some vitamins. Or you're just under a lot of stress. You do a lot of reading. And it was the doctors of another young lady. It was the father of a young lady who had gone to Williams. Her dad was the head of neurology at Columbia Presbyterian, and he was like, he walked me through. Like he actually had to stand in place and come down from wherever his office was to when I was having my MRI, to make sure that they did an MRA, to make sure that they did an MRV, to speak with the optometrist, to speak with the endocrinologist, that he took it upon himself because I guess he valued who I was to William, right? Like every time he introduced me, he would say, oh, she's so smart, or oh, she's going to do something great for the world, that you know how hard it is to get into this school, and oh, she's friends with my daughter. But we knew each other and we had some classes together. But like today, I don't know where she is, right? Like I don't know where her dad is, but he put me into contact with the other doctors, because the first set of doctors I went to were like, oh, let's look at your blood work. And they were like, your triglycerides are high, very high. You're gonna die from alcoholism. I was like, I don't drink.
You're gonna die from alcoholism. That's interesting.
Yeah, you're gonna get pancreatitis. I was like,
what? Right.
I was like, I don't engage. What are you talking about? There wasn't they just said, he said, your people get pancreatitis like this from alcoholism all the time. And I was like, wow. You didn't ask me about any of my social habits or any of those things. And I was like, at least acknowledge that I'm able to enunciate. So perhaps I'm able to engage in a level of conversation that would allow me to evaluate more than one set of circumstances. But you assume this. And he still was just like, nothing, until the other doctor told him that there was some value in me. I was like, he didn't see me. Like I didn't show up enough to be, to handle this from earlier, before we had all of the other problems.
Right.
So
And that's so powerful, that piece, because one of the things, as we've been talking about grief, and I do thank you for sharing. I know that it was a difficult time, and I know it's a difficult memory, but I also think you have such a powerful story to share with people that I'd like for you to share it, and so thank you for opening up that way. And I hear in your story the opposite of what we all really want, right? We want to be heard, we want to be seen. And essentially, this person, this doctor engaged with you, didn't hear or see you, and didn't seem particularly interested in hearing or seeing you, it sounds like, because even after you said, whoa, that can't be the answer, I don't even drink, there still was an inability to like move on to another theory or what have you. I guess, what would you advise, if you have any advice, someone who is dealing with maybe symptoms or whatever it is and isn't feeling heard, seen? When going to the kinds of schools you and I went to, we've gotten a glimpse of what it's like to have that kind of a friend. Interestingly, Daphne, who has been on to talk about her breast cancer diagnosis and that process, and as it turned out, the person who gave us the test result was a father of a friend from college. And and there is a certain level of, when that person calls and says, I want to make an appointment for so and so, that the appointment happens. But for maybe those who don't have that particular relationship, or don't have it in the right place at the right time, any advice on making sure they're heard, making sure they're seen, making sure they're cared for?
Well, I'm so thankful that you asked the question, that I don't know that I'm equipped to say somebody else, but I would say this, that nowadays it's different than the late 80s, early 90s. There are more people who are aware of our stories, right? More people who know that we kind of overlooked or not. In my case, I wasn't even taught how to ask the right questions, right? Like, let's just take into consideration that I was emancipated very early as a teenager. So even in terms of what food to eat, like, I had instructions for how to feed my fish and my birds, right? But I didn't know how to feed my body. If there was someone that I could have went to that didn't just say, oh, she's sick, or she's, well, she used to run track, so she'll have the athletic stuff back together, that if somebody would have said, hey, there's been a 10-pound difference in the course of the year. Let's look at some of your habits. Let's look at what you're eating, right? Let's get you to an endocrinologist. That if we would have done that at 8, 10 pounds, instead of waiting until I was falling down, losing my balance, losing some of my vision, not really knowing all of what was going on, that would have helped. So what I would hope for, that there would be more people who at least advertise that they are aware that this is something that's going on. Much like how they understand that there may be some men that don't want to go to the doctor. So when they do come, they know that, hey, that, somebody had to make this appointment. They had to get them dressed, get them to the car, like get them to agree to put on shoes to come out, and then drive all the way here instead of turning around and sit around all these folks. That, what do they do for us? So I would want people to just decide. Don't wait until you have everything that's completely broken. And as soon as you start feeling something, don't just go, oh, I could get some rest and it's better. There are people who are trained that could hear the truth of your symptoms early and be able to say, oh, with a headache, oh, with some itching, oh, with some balance, that they can make the connection when we would have just blown it off because it's not bleeding. I mean, me. I'm not saying anybody else, because
but I think
a broken bone, right? Yeah.
I think that's really interesting, in that you've described a couple of things that yeah, I'm not sure everybody would connect the dots. And as far as you feel comfortable, can you share what you then learned was the actual issue, and sort of at its worst, where were you then?
Okay, so there were a number of things, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think people understand now that obesity
Mm-hmm.
is like a thing that's going to lead to more issues.
Right.
So if we would have worked on my weight and diet and mobility sooner, just
Mm-hmm.
making sure that exercise was a regular part of my life and not the stress of running around, that not getting sleep. Like I didn't know the
Mm-hmm.
importance of sleep. So I think that what happened with me is that it just kept getting more stuff added on. So
Mm-hmm.
first it was the obesity. Then it was um, like asthma, or I was having difficulty breathing because I couldn't exercise. Then
Mm-hmm.
my
Mm-hmm.
heart, my endurance level was not good. It was hard to like get up. My oxygen levels were low.
Mm-hmm.
Again with the heart, then they found the valve wasn't working, and then
Mm-hmm.
a lung collapse, and then it
Mm-hmm.
was something was happening with my brain, and they finally found the mass, and it was always this really messed up blood work. So
Mm-hmm.
with having to get an endocrinologist, a neurosurgeon, a neurologist, um,
Wow.
the cardiologist, pulmonologist, like there were nutritionists. What's the eye one? Not the eye that
Ophthalmologist?
gets the glasses, the other one.
Not
Whatever the
opt.
one is, the doctor
Yeah.
one.
Yeah.
Ophthalmologist,
I
maybe?
think so.
Yeah, that we had to see how much I was losing in peripheral vision.
Mm.
So just knowing that those fields exist, and hematology, right? The blood
Mm.
doctor really needed to be able to say what was going on, because at one point my white blood count was so high that
Mm.
they sent me to an oncologist because they were like, these white blood count must be cancer. I was like, I
Wow.
was like, but God, you know what I mean? It
Yeah.
can't be all of this. And nobody was looking at what the trauma was that started it all. Like we
Mm.
didn't know that there was like some spinal cord issues too, because nobody looked at that.
Mm.
So I can't say what was the just one thing, because we kept getting more things added on. And then when
Got it.
like I fell and I broke a bone, and then I had to see an orthopedic doctor to put a plate and some screws in. And
Mm.
um it just kept compiling. I guess I would say that. But ultimately
Yeah.
they removed the mass. I worked with a cardiologist to get well. I went from 27 medications, and God has allowed me to work with you for over 100-pound loss. Like I think, what were we? Were we at 100 and it was some weight class for boxing that we lost a whole
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
person.
Yeah. It was one. I believe. Now, correct me. Wasn't it 160? I would have in my notes. 168 was the number, and
It
then
was
yeah, it's
so
like
high.
it's a super middleweight. Yeah.
And remember that my percent of body fat was so high that the visceral fat was destroying my organs. Right, that is what they found was
Mm.
the problem that was causing it my heart, because I had that dangerous fat that was separating the
Mm.
organs. Like,
Wow.
can we have fixed this with diet and exercise and
Right.
just knowing what was the length of my spine? Like, I don't know how simple it was. I don't know what the test was
Mm.
about, except that now I can speak to people who are going through diabetes issues. I can speak to people who have
Mm.
to learn how to speak, right? I
Mm.
lost my ability to speak for 4 months. And this is
Mm.
all while having a marriage in place that required two people. Well, and the
Mm.
Holy Spirit, of course,
Mm.
three. But
Mm.
Ray's doing all the work, because people thought
Mm.
that we had it all together, right?
Right. Right. And you're and you're struggling to speak even. Yeah. So obviously 168 pounds, regaining, even your facility with words. Like, we obviously spoke when we were on the phone, but you were still at a point where sometimes you would lose certain words. You'd say, oh, what's the thing that, and we'd kind of fill that in. So how do we get from there, as in our work together, even how would you describe how we got from there to where we are now, where you're helping people in the community, get their finances straight, and you're being a support through your church, and you're doing all these things and moving around and all that. Talk a little bit about that process.
So you asked me a question. You said, what do you want to do? Not what do you think you should do? What do other people think that you could do? And when I just sat still, I knew that I wanted whatever I did to glorify the goodness of God. I so really wanted to be able to be an example for my nieces and nephews. I wanted them to be able to see that no matter what, that there was a God that loved them so much and thinks so much about, that's really not worried about us, but concerns and loves us and cares for us, that other people that don't know him would want to seek a relationship with him. And I was like, what is that going to take? How do I get back to some point where I could say, oh Lord, what awesome things you have done in my life? That everywhere I look, I see a miracle performed through your presence, right? Like through study, I know those words, but I really wanted it to be my experience, to live it. Yeah.
And I, when we use, because you were very clear about that, and I remember you talking about specifically being able to help your nieces and nephews and so on. And one of the things that I've been coming to thinking about for myself, but seeing in some of the stories as people talk about dealing with different types of grief, is the power of community, of connecting with people. Where do you think that came from for you? That a lot of people would say, excuse me, you had a list of your own problems that you've listed, and I don't think anybody would have been, thought you anything bad if you'd said, no, I need to work on these things for me. But the inspiration, the real, what do you want, was always about others. It was, and then you were clear about that from the first moment. What drives that for you, or what drove it for you then, that you were so clear about that, if nothing else?
Oh, that's such a good question. And I don't know if it's, let me think. Yeah. My childhood was terrible, right? But the people, people are like, oh, I want to be a kid over again. I hated being a kid. It was difficult. And there was not anything that I could remember that was particularly enjoyable about it. It was hard. And what was easy was the work, like the schoolwork. Like I was able to finish things quickly. So the sense of community around the parents who did show up for their kids, like I could be a part of a study group, right? Or I knew how to do things that somebody would be able to utilize for some good. So somebody would want to keep me around. I thought that was the reason. But then I started to find out that there are some people who just know that everybody is worthy of love, that everybody is worthy of grief, that everybody is worthy of an opportunity to be in relationship with an eternal Father who's always going to be with them. So having those kind of surrogates around to just kind of point, whether it was a professor or Kim from Prep to Prep, or people who didn't have to but did anyway, or somebody who saw me at a bus stop and I'm searching for a nickel to use with my bus pass, and they give me the change, right? They see me reading a book. That I think all of those things in combination with my dad's mother, who stayed prayerful, right? Like I knew that woman prayed for me, that if she was cleaning somebody's house or wiping the floor, I could sit in the corner and read a book. Wow. friends' mothers that would say, it's okay for you to come if it's raining outside, you could be here. So the idea of crusade, but I think that it has been big with me. And ultimately, I think the correct answer in my heart, not just like the logical mind or the experiences that I had, my heart says that there's something that's been planted in my purpose that's designed for my good and being connected with others who could utilize whatever gift God has given me for good. And that brings me a sense of relief. Like just being able to say that comes out so with flow. You use that word a lot, right? Like the ease of it is so much better than saying, oh, I know how to dot every I and cross every T. Like I cringe at that. Instead, that crusade for this, and be able to pull back and say that this is bigger than just me. And what am I doing that is aligned to God's will? God, now, today, I say, how can I serve you? At the time that I'm going through hardship, I wasn't asking that question. I was asking all the wrong questions, or just, didn't have the energy to even bother to ask right?
questions. Right,
I wasn't seeing who I was in it. So to answer your question, that the sense of community has to come back to how we think about it. Like, do I find value in the conversation with someone who's homeless, someone else that's struggling? Do I find value in myself? And not being concerned with measuring on somebody else's measuring stick? Like, am I able to find the peace and joy that is available through connection with an eternal Father? So for me, that's where I am with it today, right? Because had I not, like, who else was going to be there for my 9 steps? Who else, when I first started walking, who else was going to be there when Ray walked out the sole of his shoes just trying to get enough money to get me medicine, right? I've talked about the night that he was up at the hospital, that he would stay awake while I was asleep, because they were telling him that I had a sleep apnea, and I was stopping breathing like over 140 times in the night. So he would stay awake. And then when these other nurses came in during the daytime who he could relate to, then he would go to sleep because he knew that they were there in case I fell asleep. But he was up all night. And who came to the hospital? These 2 ladies that we used to give a check to their food pantry. That when we were doing it better, we just had like a regular payment going to them. They found out that I was sick, and they rode all the way from East New York, Brooklyn, to Columbia Presbyterian, way uptown, with cooked food, not a bag of groceries, but cooked food to bring for him, and would stay and pray. And to watch the other side, my dad's side of the family, they're a big praying family, and I think that outside of my presence, that just them doing what they were called to do matters. Like, it avails much that they prayed as well.
What was the experience for you when those women showed up with that cooked food? Like, just what was the experience for you?
Oh my God. So I was pleased to see them, a little embarrassed that we were in need. Right, a little prideful, perhaps, like, I don't want people to see that we need help. But so grateful for the opportunity to touch and connect, to be held by someone that empathized, right, to experience empathy when I didn't have anything to give. There was nothing that they could have gotten from me except thank you. And it was sincere. So being able to be real at that time was awesome, because there was no space free of judgment. It was safe. And I knew that it was going to make Ray feel satisfied. I wasn't there to cook. And so I know that they could really get that. And I was so appreciative that, do you know how long of a train ride it is? You have to get from the L train, make a transfer at 14th Street, then ride all the way uptown. I knew that they went out of their way. Sure did.
To make it work. Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, this relationship specifically, but generally, you know, I've talked to you about how I feel about coaching and all sorts of coaching, whether I'm coaching youth sports or what have you. And I do feel like I'll use the word, I feel like it's a sacred relationship. Not that I'm, and you know, from working with me, I'm not necessarily, you know, preaching, you know, the gospel over here. That's fine. You know, I know your Bible and so on. And I definitely grew up the son of a prayerful Bible reading mother. So there's some things that we can connect on and conceptually that, you know, I understand or hear. I feel like, oh, if I use that way of expressing it, it might resonate more for you. But the relationship itself, I've just felt has been so special. And for me, it comes back to when I try to describe it, it comes back to this moment where we were, you know, first talking, you were talking about being in bed and all the things you described earlier. And your first walk the line or, you know, assignment between sessions was to find your sneakers. Like that was it. Like it wasn't like, oh, start your workout regimen, all that. And I'm curious, looking back now, how did you feel about that being your first assignment? How did you feel, you know, your first walk the line? You know, how, like, yeah, let's talk about that process, because you literally traveled you truly walked the line, like in a literal way that we're going to talk about in a moment. But yeah, what was it like starting out with that?
Okay. So my first assignment with finding the sneakers was bigger than finding the sneakers, right? You are such a great coach in that you give instructions in a way to persuade me or the listener, right? To persuade us that I can remove doubt from here. Like there's sneakers. I can find sneakers. But if you would have phrased it as, can you go through them boxes of all of those clothes that you spent thousands of dollars for that you can't wear anymore, that now you're wondering why you don't have that money in the bank instead of all of this stuff, and then to put the sneakers on knowing that you could barely get from here to there, then that might mean that I have to also put on clothes that are exercise clothes, and then he gonna ask me if I did the work. So if I don't find those sneakers, then we don't get to start. But
I understand.
I hope that people understand that that is stressful, but the willingness to feel safe and protected in a space that no matter what I did, that you were going to walk with me, right? That more importantly, that even if that was the assignment, let's just look at what was done. Did we think about it? Like lots of people get to think about stuff, and before, people just expected me to have the right answer, that they didn't realize that I had to do research, that I had to read books, that I had to do all of this, that it was just like snap, the answer, not give credit or to all of the pre-work. You were willing to let pre-work be part of the assignment and to help me to see who was going in there to get the sneakers, right? So it wasn't me, the person who worked for this person or that person, or who could just pick up this pair of sneakers. Who was going to get it? Who had to show up? Right? We talk about that. And then who is going to benefit? Like the person who shows up, I have to connect that it's going to be a benefit to me that somebody else can't give. Nobody else was going to be able to do that walking and it benefit my heart. My mind understood that, but my coach was calm and protective and reassuring and non-judgmental, right? Just giving me the opportunity to see the possibility of a positive result when doubt and fear and all of those things that are not of the Spirit of God was showing up first. And not even requiring me to focus back on him. You just were like, pick you where you at and let's look at that. And then what I loved is that the assignment, you didn't even bother me. about getting the sneakers out or where I was going to do, you were like, who was that? Today, I love that question, right? Because we get to define for ourselves that who. Now, don't have to be this person from Yale, this person from this place, this person from that school. That these institutions don't get credit for me. This family member who did drugs all their life, they don't get credit for me. That the Lord our God, who knew that I was able and allowed me to accept the free gift of salvation, made it possible to see that this suffering was not going to be for nothing. And look at you, right? You didn't say I had to be perfect. You didn't say that there had to be a measure along everybody else. You allowed me to see what was going to be necessary for this new defined success.
Yeah, no, and that who piece that coming back to that was that's always been powerful. Now you actually I shared, so I gave a little bit away the walk and the line part. So I'd love to talk about that process because I remember it was okay. We walked to the mailbox. Okay, we walked to the corner. And there was a bridge. You literally had a bridge to cross. And I wonder if you could share the story of when you crossed the bridge.
Well, I want to give you credit for getting to that point, right? Like, I don't want people to think that it went from, I just told her to put on her shoes and now we're going to tell her to go across the bridge. That when you asked me who I was, you said, well, what's your favorite color? What do you know about yourself? What is this? What adjectives describe you? I didn't know. And you gave me the choice and the time to go get a thesaurus again, figure out a couple of words, right? In fact, I have some of those in this old book.
Way.
That's why I said I went to go get the notes.
I love that.
And you told me that discipline will never deviate unless I feed myself better. So here's some other things you said I had in the side of my book. So I was like, okay, am I willing to go get the sneakers? So yeah, I did. And then it was like, leave them at the front door. So when you go out, you know that that's what you're going to put on. It was so hard. I had so much indecisiveness about what am I going to wear? What am I going to do? Can I do it? Should I go back to bed? All of these racing thoughts, right? All of that mattered. And then you're like, just go to the mailbox. Like even when you asked me the question, like, what about the mailbox? But I had to turn the doorknob and open the door and go outside and take a couple of steps. I was like, then you got to make sure that you can come back.
Right.
And it sounds ridiculous, but the sense of being with a champion, you were like, you see that you could do it. I was like, you are right. And you're like, hey, well, what are we going to do next? I was like, hey, we celebrating right now. You said, that's okay, we celebrating, but we going to set a new goal. And then you got me to the gate. And then you was like, show me some of the things you're looking at along your walk. So you got to see some of the cows. You got to see some of the people hanging clothes on their bed sheets. You got to see some of the palms. And then we got to, are you willing to go for a walk? So you set me out for other walks first and then the bridge. So when it was time for the bridge, I didn't know if I went across, how would I get back home? Because if you park on one side, that's it. It's like really over the harbor. So I had never walked that far before since the brain surgery and the other things. But hearing my coach say, what do you see? What's out there? What's happening right now? Oh, I love seeing these pictures. And hearing that I could realign and like get rid of some of the static, that I didn't have those quickening thoughts coming during the walk. Now, of course, Ray walked too. He would go places with me. He got plenty of exercise. Another time, my father-in-law, God bless him, he walked. Dad was out there. My sister-in-law, Dorothy, she came. She had her baby in the stroller. We all out there at different times. And that's what I love about being a part of a bigger family, that you gave me the willingness to reconnect And they were always there, just like the eternal Father is always there. The hand is always out, is unchanging. Thank God for my in-laws. That my in-laws have been married for a long time. They never asked more of me than to love their husband. I mean, love my husband, who's
their son, right?
And to just love the Lord. So when you gave me the chance to do the walk, it was not just physical exercise. So that's why the bridge was important. And to bridge is to get from one place to the other, to connect, losing the fear of the connection. Oh, it's so symbolic of so many things. And when we got across, Ray was like, do you want me to go back and get the car and then I come and get you? I was like, I think we could do it. I was like, let's go back the other way. The sunset was on the other side as we walked back. And it was a really good time of being present. And I hadn't experienced that in a long time. I wasn't thinking about what medicine. I wasn't crying. Even thinking about it now, I am still able to get like the joy that was that's never going to go away. It wasn't just happiness that kind of comes and goes. That is always going to be a joyful memory. Whereas somebody else might just use it as exercise, going across the bridge, they jog and come back. I was like, what was the big deal? But for me, I was like, hey, now.
Yeah. Welcome back, Mo. Right? That was great. Part of that experience and observing it was amazing. And I did love getting those pictures. And you know me, I'm like, yeah, text me the pictures. I want to see what's going on. That was great. What I love about the bridge story in particular is that you made a decision. Okay, I can actually go past what we originally set. You were able to look at yourself and I think I can do it. And it wasn't just like, we can do it. Day one, I'm just going to go out and walk, fly past. It was like steadily you strengthened yourself and you really were able to look at a situation and go, yeah, I think I got it. You've since done that in other ways. And I'm curious because we did start out talking about your desire to serve and to give. You are so far now from somebody who's, laying in the bed and not connecting with people and all that. You're serving in a number of ways. And I was wondering if you could share what some of those are, but maybe beyond that, how that's playing into this connection story that you've been telling. Because I'm really on this, that's the key to managing grief is connecting. So yeah, just curious about some of that work you've been doing since.
So I want to be mindful in this conversation that these victories are not the place. Like it's not the triumph, right? It's the progressive kind of ebb and flow of, I got an injury or I did a little too much, like to know when you could say it's more or is this that I need to drink water, acquiring the information and having to train people around to help me recognize that although I'm still disabled, that I still have utility, right? I may not be able to do a full schedule, and that's okay. I may need to take a nap at 2:00 because that's when things happen for me, or I might need to have physical therapy or have a nurse still come to the house, right? I still have things like that come up. Sometimes I have to go back and take classes with the endocrinologist. Sometimes my blood levels are off if I let stress or if I allow people to impose their things on me and I don't set up a healthy boundary, I'll take responsibility and accountability for that. I won't say people did it to me. I say, I know enough now about establishing healthy boundaries, and when I don't enforce them in a good way, I could be taken advantage of. Even people who know that I am a crusader, that I want to help people, that it can become a weakness, right? That someone could take advantage of to get over right? Let's just exploit all of if she only could give 2 hours a week, exploit it when I might be better utilized some other way, because they're not going to be the ones that are there when I need to sleep. They're not going to be the ones when we have to figure out what I'm missing in my diet, or if I need to have infusions, or if I have to get back to the hematologist. That's not them. And I still make the mistake of thinking that I have to do this bigger part. And I would like to be able to refocus and say that I'm just a vessel, that all of this is God's will. Let him have his way, that if he makes me able for this part. So in answering your part of your question about connection, now I have to listen to the parts of the scripture that says the finger works with the hand and the hand works with this part, or like the fivefold ministry, that there might be things that overlap, but they have to work together. That I cannot be in a position to think that this is some type of thing that's independent, right? That I can't, no matter what medicine I get, no matter what they do, I cannot make myself breathe. I can hold my breath for as long as I want, but there's something about the design of this vessel that that has something else that involuntarily wants it to take the breath, right? So what do I have to be connected to? Why is the connection important? Because I can't do it all. That I am not God. I am not. That I am weak, and in my weakness, his strength will be perfected. That people will hopefully be able to see that is something in the relationship to him, that he will set the right people on my path. He will set the right course. And also set the things that will require me to have to learn, like to sit back and not listen to those institutions that are like, oh, you're so special, you're genius, you're this, let's suck out everything that we put in you and lead the way in the alumni fund, right? But they're not there if I needed $40 for a prescription.
That's not that, right? No.
Right. Yeah. So who do I want to be connected with? Why is connection important? It's you teaching me about being able to discern authenticity. Yeah. And I still need to be better at that. So yes, connection is important. Yes, being able to be in a safe place where I can grow, right? Like not just be the person that has it all together. Like I need to grow here, that I need to throw some things onto the wall and see what makes of it. What do you think about this? Like, can you help me to evaluate without judgment? Yeah. And that's what I love about this sense of community, that when people allow for grace and to know that we all deserve mercy, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you describe, deciding who we're going to connect to and that kind of thing, that is so much at the core of what I want. We align generally, but the aligned circle specifically to do, we get together for the cipher, and people are able to just, learn some, laugh some, relax some. And you start to see the relationship that's forming, right? Folk look for each other now and show up. Oh, how have you been? And you can start to feel that starting to happen. Are there things you look for, whether within that context, which you've been a part of from the beginning, or otherwise? Are there things you're looking for in who you want on your team, who you want to be a part of this as you move forward?
So that part about, thank you for the question, because that part about the team is not necessarily everybody that applies, right? Like people could show up and want to be a part, but knowing who can be selected is important. And having other people, that's why you need assistant coaches. That's why you need other people that can help you take a look and determine what are the qualifications. And sometimes things that we can't see matter too. Like, as an educator, emotional intelligence is important for grit and things like that, right? But what do I see with the cipher? Oh my God, that now here's a space where we could learn, grow, enlarge ourselves so that when we improve in areas where we didn't even know, like we're not coming to take notes, we're not coming to take a class, but we come with the expectation that there's something great that's going to happen. Of course, there's going to be fantastic music, right? That DJ Boogie, she's doing it. And she does it every time for us.
Yeah.
And you bring the best guests that we don't know who or what their value that they're going to bring, but we trust you that they're going to bring something. Oh my goodness, what about Mama Moody, right? Like, what about the...
That was so much fun.
Spectacular. I was completely laughing that I had to go on mute because I was laughing so much. I thoroughly enjoyed her.
That's great. I love that.
And what about the people that you have up at the beginning? Dr. Nadine. Oh, I could just sit here and just hold my heart. And Talia, the stories that these women choose to tell about wanting to be better in a way that better wasn't necessarily a part of the original definition. I love that they make us want to be able to take a look or to open up. And if anybody is ever wondering, is there a space where I could grow in areas where I didn't even know what to ask? Just come and enjoy it, that you'll come away with something that is just fantastic. And we all bring value, right? Like it doesn't matter what level you want it. I think that one time somebody had asked me, well, why am I here? That I don't have this, I don't have that. I was like, you're here because it's designed for all of us. No matter who you are, what point in your life you're at, that by the time you hang up, we're going to be like, I needed that.
Yeah.
And even if you can't describe it.
I love how much you've enjoyed it. That is great. And very much what I've wanted it to be, because I do think that's the one that, again, I'll say it's what keeps standing out to me is that when I've been in the moment of my life that I felt were most marked by grief, I was most likely to feel disconnected and to disconnect. And I think that's what we have to be mindful of. And even when I think about things like funerals or, what have you, I think there are these things that have built up over time that allow for us to reconnect a little bit in those moments. And that, right, because I think there's some real strength in that. I guess I wonder from here what you see for yourself, what you see for the people with whom you're connecting, like as you're, like we said, you walk to the mailbox, I'm like, oh, can we make it to the gate? So I guess, what's the gate or the bridge at this point for you?
I want to be able to answer your question, but I don't want to leave out how important team is, right? Like who is going to say yes to you and who do you say yes to, right? I know that we don't want to, I don't want to be in a position where time or resources are wasted.
Yes.
So anyone at this point that has a value for time that we can't get back, like it's one of our resources that just is, comes as it comes, right? Like if you get it a day at a time, great. If you get it moment by moment, great. But what about the resources too? Like, stewardship. So what do I see? I just see that there has to be some value in my waking hours. There also has to be value in my rest. Rest is a verb. There has to be value in the time with the people I treasure, right? And that they have time to treasure their folks too. So information helps. I think that's what I really am put here for, that because I was able to gather so much information, I don't really work at any of this because my work is done by the Holy Spirit. He helps me to make me able, because there's days when my work is to sleep, that I have to assign sleep. And we've learned that, right? That we've learned that if I don't sleep, that cortisol level is going to start me on a path that can kill me. Like, and I'm not saying that as a joke. That for me, that that's the first thing that my blood work has to get done. Where is my cortisol level? That for other people might be, oh, it's not a big deal. That's the first one that we have to look at. And I have to watch my oxygen levels. So people who are not going to value that, or if I don't give it its proper attention, I can't do anything because I'll be back on my back. Like I still have these debilitating things. There's days my pain is so bad that the only thing that gets me up is knowing that there's someone counting on me to sit and pray with them. And I'm like, all right, if they're willing to let me lay down and do it like this on the phone, get me pray together like this. Or if they say, do you have this information? I'm like, oh, can you go to the library? It's on the second shelf. I was over there 2 weeks ago. If you ask the lady, she'll tell you that, you know, the lady with the ponytail, she came in and this is the book she was working on. If you just go get it.
Yeah.
So I think that that's where I am. I think that I'm realistic in knowing what my physical limitations are, but my belief that God is able to do exceedingly and abundantly above all things, so and for my good, and He could deliver me from anything. If I'm willing to stand on His promises as truth for me, then that's it. That I want Him to be able to say, well done. So I can't concretely contextualize, hey, here's an example on one, here's goal number two, here's what I want for these people. You know what I want? I want them to have the peace and joy that will allow them to have a life abundantly. It's not how many cars they could drive. It's not, you know, if they could pay their light bill for a year. Can they do some of the things that you've helped me to be able to do, or at least think about them? Like, I didn't know that there was this much value in being able to spend time thinking. And I'm like, look at these corporations. They're out here with all research and development teams. They research first millions of dollars and then develop the people into what they want before they even do sales and marketing. I'm like, all right, now.
Right.
we need that for ourselves. That's what my hope is, to get better at that, even in my physical weakness. That today you see this, but 10 minutes from now, you know, I might be back using the walking sticks because I keep them near. Like I know at some point I'm going to need to rely on support. But isn't that great that I have a resource available that can help me to continue? So that's what I was thinking.
And you know, this moment isn't that moment, right? So you walk now, and when you need the walking stick, you'll leverage that. I want to thank you, one, for being a guest today. I think that I just think your story is such an inspiration. You know, I've gone, you know, when I've gone places and told people, you know, this has been used to lose 168 pounds, and there's so much more to the story, you know, but people always go, what? You know, like that's one of the ones where people are like, oh, okay, maybe we'll listen to this guy, you know, and but I want to thank you for a couple of things, just for who you've been in my life. And people, like, seriously, like I was 12 years old going to this school that was unlike any place I had ever spent any serious amount of time. And I really do appreciate how I was embraced. But in this new version of our relationship, you've always been such a believer. Like, I guess I'll use it that way in terms of Align. And you've brought other people to this, introduced it to them, introduced them to me. And I feel like there's just been this sense that I've gotten from you that you believe in what we're doing here. And I don't know that I have the right word. Overjoyed is in the vicinity of how I feel when you're telling me stories, you know, when you're telling me the work you're doing at the church, and you're telling me the work you're doing to help people, and you're sharing about your relationship with Ray and the things you're doing, and you're at the library doing this, and to remember that, yeah, there was a time where getting to the mailbox was an aspirational goal, but we did it, and we built, you know, brick by brick, and we got there. So I'm just so thankful for you and the work that you're doing, and just look forward to continuing to work together. Yeah. in an interesting way, I help myself out too, because there have been a few occasions, more than a few along the way, where you have been a real support, prayed over me and all this, and I appreciate it. I really, really do.
I'm thankful for a new perspective that it has helped me to enlarge, because look at the safe space in which I can learn and grow and connect with people who authentically want to see better in everyone, not see them as compared to this one or that one. And no matter where we start along the way, whatever the point is where we're starting, that is okay. Let's just identify it and see where the and how. Let's But I thank you too. I thank you too that this is definitely an opportunity where more people, I think, will have the opportunity to benefit because of what you created. And there's nothing that has been lost on me in this. My family, my household, and those I treasure, I know have benefited from you. And we all thank you. We all thank you, sir. We thank you.
All right. Well, I'm gonna leave it right there. Thanks so much. Big hug. We'll talk soon. We'll see each other at the cipher. And take good care, Mo. Really appreciate you. Take care.
All right, you too. Bye-bye.
All right, bye-bye. All right, y'all. You know what time it is. It's time to walk the line. And here it is. Extend a hand. See, one thing that struck me in my conversation with Mo, and again, I thank Monique Thomas for being a guest and sharing her story. And man, it's so inspiring. We didn't even tell you about her finishing the 5K. That was bananas. But one of the things that struck me about it is I talked about how good she was to me when I got to Poly. And then we talked about the work we did together. And I had something I thought could help. And then she is then showing other people how to use the aligned methodology, or bringing them my way so that we can work on some things together. And it struck me that image of her, when she extends a hand out, to those ahead of her, she also extends a hand out to those behind her. I thought, man, that is really something. That really hits me. And I just think, extend a hand. Maybe somebody is in need of your help, but also maybe you're in need of help. But I think when we get into the habit of creating community, and speaking of which, come check us out at We Align. That's a place where extending your hand in either case is encouraged and rewarded. But get in the habit of extending a hand. I deeply, deeply believe that sense of community, that ability to reach out and help, or to reach out and say you need help, is at the core of overcoming, of managing, of living through, of navigating grief. And I want to see us do that. There's a lot of grief in the world these days. And I want to see us learn how to get through it. And I believe that has to be together. So, extend a hand. Anyway, until the next time, I want you all to join us at We Align. Come on into the community. We're going to be doing some new things. We have another virtual conference in January called Wanna Be Starting Something. You'll be seeing more information on that on social media and on our sites. You can join us on the Facebook page. You can check us out on Instagram, TikTok. Basically, where you at, we'll come find you. And until the next time, we gon' get unstuck. We gon' be unstuck. We gon' live unstuck. Unstuck as fuck.